What's up, it's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and today I'll be giving my lineup that I'd play against Serbia in the upcoming friendly for the January camp. And I should say, this is a friendly in the January camp. This isn't a game that we should really care about winning. We're not going to throw the game or anything, but winning isn't the priority of this game. This game, this entire camp, is to test out players to see if any of them can impact the senior team. And that's going to be impacting my philosophy behind this game. It's going to be more behind testing players to see how they can do with the real squad. Though I should say that, when you are testing players, you still need to have enough quality in the team so that you can really see the best out of them. So, like, for example, if we don't give a striker any service, we're not going to learn anything about them. So, this isn't going to be a team full of the U20 players. It's still going to be a team full of, in my opinion, like the best guys we have. But there is going to be some experimentation. But there is going to be one U20 player in the squad, and I think it's pretty obvious who it is. In goal, I have the youngest player on the team, Gabriel Slonina, and I think it's easy to see why he's in here. He was a good goalkeeper in the MLS at 18, and his stock is just on the rise. He got his move to Chelsea. He's been playing a bit with their U21 team, and honestly, come next year when he gets a full preseason under him, I he could very easily become the backup, start playing some games. Maybe I guess they're not looking like they'll be in the Champions League, especially if they get to the Europa League. I wouldn't be surprised to see Slonina playing for them, and especially cup games as well. I think he's really on the rise, and I think we should get him familiar with the national team setup as soon as possible. And when comparing him to the other goalkeepers, I think he's as good as Roman Solitano, and Solitano is like 4 years older than him, so I definitely want to be playing Slonina. And like Sean Johnson, he's a solid keeper. It's just I don't think he should really be with this team at all moving forward. He's not so good with his feet that putting Slonina into this team will negatively impact our buildup. I think it'll make it better, if anything. Honestly, I actually think Slonina is almost or maybe at this point as good as Johnson. Period. And like Sean Johnson, he's been with a team for a while, but he doesn't really deserve a swan song. Like it's I don't think any of the veterans really do, but like it's not like a Tim Howard situation where you want to give him one last game. It's like, no, like you're fine, good third choice goalkeeper for a while, but like playing Slonina is the bigger priority, and I think we all want to get a look at Slonina with this national team. And there is still a little bit of a threat of Poland coming in for him. I don't think that will happen, but and this won't cap time or anything, but I think it's best if we get Slonina playing with this national team as soon as possible because he could very easily be our best keeper come 2026, and we want him to be ready for it. At center back, I'm going with Walker Zimmerman and Sam Rogers, and this really wasn't too much of a decision for me. They're kind of the only real options. I really would have liked to have like a Matt Miazga in this camp, maybe Miles Robinson, but I don't think he's healthy enough. But with Zimmerman, I think it's easy to have him in the team. He's just one of those guys who, well, I don't think he'll ever really be, someone who will help the senior team at a big international tournament. I think he was kind of a weak link for us at the World Cup. At this level, which isn't very high, Serbia is sending a domestic team and a couple of MLS players, and the there's like only two players on Serbia who are older than 25. Like this isn't going to be a great opposition we're facing. Like Zimmerman will be fine. I think at this level he's even pretty good on the ball. Not when the game gets a lot faster, but he should be good for this game, and he's good enough that I trust him to allow other players to shine. And then Sam Rogers is somebody who I'm not too sure about. Like this is why I would have liked to had like a Matt Miazga in this camp, or honestly even like a Henry Kessler or Donovan Pines type player. Just somebody who we know is like a good MLS defender because like I'm not really sure if Rogers will be good. He's looked pretty good from everything I've seen with what he's been doing in Denmark, but you can't really be sure. I certainly think it's good to have him to test him. I'm glad we brought him into this camp, but I'm not really sure how great he'll be. Uh, especially on the ball. But hey, it's worth a try, and he might end up really showing out and maybe even earning himself a bigger move for the summer. So we'll just have to see. But I mean, they kind of have to start because Jalen Neal, he's a good prospect with the U20 team, but he's still yet to have made his MLS debut, and I don't really think we can rely on him to be a starter. And like Aaron Long's Aaron Long. Fullback was one of the tougher positions for me to really put into this lineup because there are some players who have a lot of potential, in my opinion, but I think that it's a bit less of a priority than looking at the center of the midfield. And I'd rather put players in who I know will be at least solid rather than too much experimenting at this spot. Because especially like right back, I feel pretty good about Dest and Scally. And left back, well, it'd be good to give Jonathan Gomez a game. I both like the potential and like the actual play of John Tolkin. He's been playing very well for New York Red Bulls. I think Chasing the Cup rated him as the top U21 player in the MLS this season, or U20 American player in the MLS this season. And it's easy to see why. He's proved to be a really solid defender, and going forward, he's shown a lot more promise this year. I think he's a player who probably will get a move from New York Red Bulls relatively soon, and he could probably impact the national team relatively quickly because we don't have that backup left back behind Jedi Robinson. I think he's probably shown more promise than George Bello. He looks just as good as Sam Vines did in the MLS. So he could easily be that guy to break through. And I'm willing to take that chance rather than experimenting with Jonathan Gomez, who I really like his potential. I said for a while that I would have liked to have him like with the national team at the World Cup just to cap tie him for his potential at left back. I didn't really end up committing to that, but honestly, it would have been just as good as bringing Shaq Moore. But I think that we see a lot of potential with Gomez, but similar to Jalen Neal, he's not really ready yet. And I think there's a lot of merit in actually testing John Tolkin because I think he could be a very solid player for that actual national team. And then at right back, I went with Julian Gressel. I would really like to experiment with DeJuan Jones at right back, mostly because with how our attackers are with the senior national team, well, this is a senior national team, with the real national team, all of them are like right-footed attackers. So having a right-footed left back really doesn't give us the width that you need to have on the field. So I think Jones's only chance is as a right back, which is a bit unfortunate because I don't think he's as good as Dest or Scally or probably not Brian Reynolds, but I think that he has played well enough with New England that he deserves a shot. So I'd probably experiment with that in the second half. Like again, it's an experiment and it's not that high priority, so I wouldn't start him there. And I'd go with Julian Gressel, who is new to the national team, but he's been a very solid player in the MLS for a long time. He's a bit more attacking than maybe you'd like to have on this team, but ideally. But I think against Serbia, it'll be fine. Honestly, the extra attacking threat will probably help pin them a bit deeper and prevent them from attacking. The best defense is a good offense. So I'm fine putting Gressel in there. I think that he has a chance of being like maybe the third or fourth choice fullback for the squad. Again, as I mentioned before, behind Jedi, Dest, and Scally. I think he has a decent chance of being better than John Tolkin. And if Tolkin really doesn't impress, then I'm fine with still having Scally or Dest to be our backup left back and just bringing the fourth best available fullback. So I think it's definitely worth testing out Julian Gressel. He's been good enough in the MLS that he warrants it. And I think it's a pretty sure thing, and he won't bring down the quality of the team. Now we go into the midfield, and this is the part of the team where I really want to test players out. And I want to go with Aidan Morris and Eryk Williamson at the base of a 4-2-3-1. And I think we do need to switch to a 4-2-3-1 just with the team. I think that's where Tyler Adams is the most comfortable. But just for this squad, I want to really test out these two defensive-minded midfielders. And I feel like this is the position to get the best out of them. Aidan Morris and Eryk Williamson, they're both, I think, an upgrade on Kellen Acosta, both on the ball with their technical ability, and I want to see how they can really do defensively as a tandem because they're another two players similar to John Tolkin, where I think they have a real chance of breaking into the national team. Aidan Morris was, and actually both of them were probably on track before a couple of really bad leg injuries, and I think that just giving them time, giving them a chance will really help them out. And honestly, when it comes to Acosta, he's a good defensive player, but when I was talking earlier about like the U20 guys potentially like bringing down the team, I think Acosta's technical ability is so, below standard for this national team that it would actually hurt the rest of the players on the team having him on the field, which is harsh, but it's been shown again and again when we start Acosta and have him do anything on the ball, which we would have to do because he'd have to be involved with the build-up in this setup. So I think we should bench Acosta for this one. I don't think we should bring him in to the national team again until we get to another competitive, like not even like Nations League final. If we get to there and nobody has stepped up at a defensive midfielder, we bring him in as like our worst case scenario. But I want to test out other players because we have guys like Morris and Williamson and honestly Cardoso and Tessman who are better on the ball and might be able to offer the defensive ability that he has. And we just need to give them a shot. And to everybody who says, oh, he saved us at the World Cup, we wouldn't have been in that situation for him to foul Bale if we didn't sub him on and go defensively because we were dominating that Welsh side. Putting on a cost is why we lost that. Not why we lost that game, but going defensive, I think, was a mistake against Wales. So we wouldn't have been in that position if Acosta wasn't on the field, in my opinion, and if we actually played Gio Reyna. But that's besides the point. I'm really excited to get a look at Williamson and Morris, see how we can do with them on the ball. It's not good. We're not going to learn too much. This isn't a great Serbian team we're playing against, but let's see how they can do because we've seen midfielders come into this game and still look really bad against bad competition. I'm thinking last year when we went a man up against Bosnia and we still looked terrible. That was just eye-opening for this how bad this team was. But I think that Morris and Williamson both deserve a chance, and I'm really excited to see what they can do. Next is who I'd be playing as our attacking midfielder, as the 10 in this group. And this is probably the hardest decision that I felt like I had to make in this one. I'm going with Alan Sonora as the 10 over Jesus Ferreira. I actually really like Ferreira in that position. You know, I criticize him a lot with the national team because he's not a good striker, in my opinion, not at that level at least, but I think he clearly has a ton of talent. Like his goal scoring numbers in the MLS was really good, and he's a very technical player. And I think there is potential for him in the midfield. Now, if we are playing with a 10, I'd prefer like a Gio Reyna or a Brendan Aronson. But I think Ferrer does have like a lot of room to grow, and I think he is going to be a good player. But I think he needs to get to Europe and just really start to test himself. I don't think there's anything left for him to do in the MLS, and it's just going to kind of hinder his development if he keeps staying there. And, you know, when I'm looking at this team, I think that it's to experiment with the squad. And we kind of know what Hayes Ferreira can do against bad opposition. We don't need to see him score 4 goals against like a like 6th-tier players in England again. So I'd like to give Alan Sonora a look. I know that he's a very technical player. He might not have the defensive ability that we really like in the squad, but like this is a time to test out the players. He was looking pretty good whenever I watched him in Argentina. He's probably going to move to the MLS now. It'd honestly be pretty decent to showcase him out. And I think this is a good step for him to really get to show what he can do. Bringing another creative player into the team because the creativity in like these types of games is kind of what holds us back a lot of the time. Kind of why I wanted to see Diego Luna with the senior team. He'd be coming off the bench, obviously, but you know, like a lot of times these games can become like really static, just going like passing sideways the entire time. Again, just go back and watch that Bosnia game last year. It was dreadful. But I think that with Senor in the team, it's that creativity that we need. He can provide a spark, maybe find that pass that we need to really break open the game. And I want to test him out. And, you know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So what? It's a January camp, it's friendly games. I think he warrants having this shot. Next is our 2 wingers, and this is another position that was a bit tough, but I feel pretty good about the players that I selected, even though neither of those 2 players are going to be playing in their preferred position. On the left wing, I'm going with Matthew Hoppe, and on the right wing, I'm going with Paxton Pomykal. The only tough one I felt like leaving off was Alejandro Zendejas, who, you know, the whole story about him even being able to play with the U.S. squad is like interesting. But I think the main thing with the wing position is I'm looking at players who could potentially positively impact the senior team. And I don't think that Zendejas really breaks into that team and adds anything that we're missing. He's not like in a position of need like Tolkin or Morris or Williamson, and he's not really like a great prospect like any of the U20 players. Like he'd be an upgrade over like Jordan Morris or Paul Arriola, but that's not really the standard. And when I look at Matthew Hoppe, I see somebody who could be a really talented attacker for us. We saw him at the Gold Cup where he was our best offensive player. We've seen like I'd say it's more glimpses of talent. That hat trick he had with Schalke, a couple of the goals he scored. He had that one assist against Real Madrid, and it's really not too much, but you can see the talent is there. And I feel like if he gets consistent playing time and just consistency somewhere, like I really think he should stay at Middlesbrough for like probably 2 years at the very least. Like maybe get a loan out to like a maybe even like a League One side and just get some playing time, get some confidence again. But you see the talent with him. He's got a lot of good physical traits. His hold up play is really good, especially for like how good he is with his feet for his size. Like good physically, like we love his like mentality. And I think that he has something to offer. I'm playing him as a wing instead of striker because, well, spoilers, Brendan Vazquez has kind of earned that spot up top. But when I look at Hoppy, it's like he's he has that potential to reach that next level. And I think both helping him out by giving him the confidence by having him play this game would be good for him. And I think he can really, I think he's good enough to play at this level. Like he's better technically than a guy like Ariola or Cal, and he has a good eye for goal. I think he has something to offer for this squad. And then Paxton Pomykal on the right wing. It's what I mentioned before. We don't have many left footed attackers. Even if he's more comfortable in the central mid position, well, I don't think he's good enough to break into the squad at a center mid. And having a left footed attacker is pretty valuable. We don't have anybody in that position until Kevin Paredes really breaks through and gets into the team, which I think will happen, but it hasn't yet. And this is a role for Pomykal. He's very good technically. I think he's shown a lot of good creative talent, and he might be able to do well at this position. It is one of the more experimental spots in this team, but this is the time to do it. If it doesn't work out, so what? So I feel like it's good to test out Pomykal at this inverted wing position because I think it would really help the senior team to have somebody in that spot. And Pomakal's shown a lot of talent, similar to Morris and Williamson. He had a really bad injury that negatively impacted his development, but I think the talent's there, and I'm willing to test it out. So I definitely like to see Paxton Pomykal and Matthew Hoppe play the wings in this game. I already said it. Up top's going to be Brandon Vazquez. It's probably the easiest pick in the team. He had a very good season with FC Cincinnati. I think it was too late in the cycle to try to integrate him into the senior team, and I'm really not too sold on him, but he's shown a lot of really good movement. His finishing's been strong, so he definitely deserves a chance for the national team. Let's see how he can do. I want to put a good amount of decent technical players around him, like a Pomykal. Hoppy we know can play, Sonora as well. So we can see how we can do like in build up, maybe drop into the midfield a bit for combining. And I think it's worth giving him a shot. Striker is a position that's kind of like nobody's really has it at the moment. I think Josh Sargent looks really good. I think I'm higher on Haji Wright than a lot of people. Daryl DK is a big option for us, and not to mention P. Falk, Ricardo Pepe. Like there's a lot of good prospects, but nobody's really taken the reins of that position. And maybe this could be the start of it for Brandon Vazquez. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a big move somewhat soon. And I think he's a really talented player who deserves this shot. So striker is pretty easily going to be Brandon Vazquez. And lastly, just some players who I'd like to see during this game, even if they don't start. I'd really like to see Jonathan Gomez come off the bench. We saw how well he impacted, the December camp game last year. I'd like to see him come on again. Then Dewan Jones at right back, as I mentioned before. Then I'd like to see Zendejas come on. Paxton Aaronson's another 2003 that I'd really like to see with this group. And then I'd like to see Hayes Ferrer as a 10 and move Matthew Hoppe to the 9 for a little bit because I feel like that's both their best positions. Let's see how they can do in that spot. And yeah, it's my opinions on what I do with the January camp for the Serbia game. And again, I want to say, like, I don't really care about winning this game. Like, I think we won that Bosnia game last year. It was so bad. Nobody even cared that we won. And like this is just about experimenting with the team, seeing if anybody can really help the national team moving forward, especially like Tolkin, Morris, Williamson, Hoppe, Vazquez. Like I'd really like to experiment with a lot of these players because I think that they could be good and they could help us. And now it's time to test out if they're good enough because we don't really gain anything. Like nothing's really gained at all by just putting Aaron Long, Paul Arriola, Kellen Acosta, like into the team. Like, okay, they do fine at this level. We already know it. They're not going to help us reach the next level. So, in my opinion, it's time to move on from them. And if we get to a big final or something and nobody's better than them, okay, that's when we bring Kellen Acosta back to the team. But until then, like it's time to experiment because we have a World Cup and a Copa America probably coming up, and we need to be at our best. And I want us to test out more players to help us grow and reach that next level. And yeah, that's my philosophy behind this camp. And I really want to see a couple of these guys play, especially Matthew Hoppe. It's been so long since we've seen him. So yeah, that's all I'll talk about. Hopefully we can get, hopefully it's fun. We get some wins. We get to see some talent. And yeah, that's all I'll talk about. See you.